Hello, my name's Ian Craigan. I'm an ALM worship leader at Christ Church, Lower Broadheath. Welcome to this, the fifth in a short series of reflections considering issues that we wrestle with through the lens of Old Testament scriptures. Today we're thinking about depression and mental health, and our reading concerns the prophet Elijah. Immediately after he's had one of his greatest victories, putting to shame the 450 prophets of Baal, then seeing them put to death. Chapter 19 of the first book of Kings picks up the story. Now Ahab told Jezebel everything Elijah had done and how he'd killed all the prophets with the sword. So Jezebel sent a messenger to Elijah to say, "May the gods deal with me, be it ever so severely, if by this time tomorrow I do not make your life like one of them." Elijah was afraid and ran for his life. When he came to Beersheba in Judah, he left his servant there while he himself went a day's journey into the wilderness. He came to a broom bush, sat down under it and prayed that he might die. "I've had enough, Lord," he said. "Take my life. I'm no better than my ancestors." Then he lay down under the bush and fell asleep. All at once, an angel touched him and said, "Get up and eat." He looked around, and there by his head was some bread baked over hot coals and a jar of water. He ate and drank and then lay down again. The angel of the Lord came back a second time and touched him and said, "Get up and eat, for the journey is too much for you." So he got up and ate and drank. Strengthened by that food, he travelled 40 days and 40 nights until he reached Horeb, the mountain of God. There he went into a cave and spent the night. And the word of the Lord came to him. "What are you doing here, Elijah?" He replied, "I have been very zealous for the Lord God Almighty. The Israelites have rejected your covenant, torn down your altars, and put your prophets to death with the sword. I'm the only one left, and now they're trying to kill me too." The Lord said, "Go out and stand on the mountain in the presence of the Lord, for the Lord is about to pass by." Then a great and powerful wind tore the mountains apart and shattered the rocks before the Lord. But the Lord was not in the wind. After the wind there was an earthquake, but the Lord was not in the earthquake. After the earthquake came a fire, but the Lord was not in the fire. And after the fire came a gentle whisper. When Elijah heard it, he pulled his cloak over his face and went out and stood at the mouth of the cave. Then a voice said to him, "What are you doing here, Elijah?" He replied, "I have been very zealous for the Lord God Almighty. The Israelites have rejected your covenant, torn down your altars, and put your prophets to death with the sword. I am the only one left, and now they're trying to kill me too." The Lord said to him, "Go back the way you came, and go to the desert of Damascus. When you get there, anoint Hazael king over Aram." Firstly, a disclaimer. I'm not a trained psychologist, psychiatrist, therapist or counsellor. What I know about the clinical causes and treatments of depression could be written on the bus ticket for all the use it might be. But I do have experience gleaned from personal and professional life. I worked for many years in community development on housing estates, both urban and rural, where the impacts of poverty, unemployment, limited choices, substandard housing, substance misuse and degraded environment often resulted in people needing help with their depression and their mental health. As a Sure Start manager, I was privileged to explore multi-agency collaboration between professionals from community psychiatric nursing, midwifery, health visiting, social work, speech and language therapy, education, housing and the arts. And more recently, my work as a storyteller is rooted in my belief that narrative and myth can help us engage with and make sense of ourselves and the world around, taking us to new places and transcending what we may have normalised as our lot in life. Secondly, a confession. Having just extolled the power of story to cast light on our now and open doors to our then, I started out like you, I expect, puzzled as to what this strange story of Elijah could possibly hold that will shed light. So let's start wrestling with it. Repeated readings suggest that the story illustrates 5 challenges that are faced by both those who are suffering and those who are seeking to help. Better explanations and more detailed exploration of how you might begin to tackle these challenges can be found through both the Samaritans and the mental health charity Mind, and their contacts will appear at the end of this reflection. Challenge 1 is that the sufferer may have little outwardly to show for it. On the outside, they may appear to the world as a success, perhaps even top of the game. Take the instance of the innumerable musicians, TV and film stars who find themselves in rehab. The film Rocket Man portrays Elton John's struggles very powerfully. And the recent Olympics have already thrown up concerns for the mental welfare of young rising sports stars, with the pressures on them to be perfect and exceptional all the time. I remember well when my wife Ali and I escaped our first home in Merseyside. We'd been there through the Toxteth riots, living in a small corpy flat with a toddler and newborn baby, surrounded by dogs, broken glass and anger. I was successful in getting a new job in Northumberland, and suddenly we were walking daily on silver sands, carrying our newborn and watching the toddler splash in the sea. Everything was perfect, except, and I have her permission to share this, Ali cried all the time. At first I was furious. Wasn't this everything she wanted? I needed to understand that postnatal depression is no respecter of better job prospects or a nicer environment. For us and for many, it's a common result of the traumatic upheaval and change associated with birth, moving home, and in our case, bereavement too. So, some common ground with Elijah, who on the surface is a success, calling down fire on the enemies of the Lord and leading the people in uprising against false gods and their leaders. Yet one word from Jezebel and he's running for his life. Challenge 2 is the disconnect between people on the outside and the person on the inside. Dwindling communication, increasing isolation. The concerned onlooker may, like me on the beach in Northumberland, plead with the sufferer to count your blessings. Look on the bright side. Shake yourself out of it. On the inside, there's a drive to be numbed, unknown, to shut off and shut down. Witness Elijah crawling under a bush. I've had enough. I'm not good enough. Let me sleep. The Old Testament story takes a turn here. So far, we've watched on as Elijah removes himself further and further from society, afraid of being put to death, but now desiring death. Suddenly, there's another force at work. An angel pops by with a picnic and a word of encouragement. Elijah wakes, eats, and goes back to sleep. The third challenge is that poor mental health can result in deteriorating self-care and self-image. I'm not worth anything, so I'm not worth taking care of. This may result in visual and behavioural clues being presented to those on the outside: poor diet, lack of hygiene, erratic timekeeping. But there are also disorders where sufferers grow adept at masking or explaining these changes to outsiders, developing a dual life founded on secrets and evasions. For Elijah, another deliverer arrives and another word of encouragement. Suddenly he's on his feet and heading for a cave up a mountain. Challenge 4. From the outside, We want nothing more than the good of our loved one. And that good is represented by them being back on the rails as quickly as possible. And once coaxed back on the rails, we expect them to know what's good for them and stay there. The sufferer, in turn, may be racked with guilt and fear, wanting to please but powerless in the face of overwhelming odds. Experience shows that more often than not there will be relapses. Elijah leaves his bush and finds a cave. Again, I recommend Rocket Man if you want to share the frustration of seeing someone climb so many times out of the swamp only to jump right back in. So, having simply met the basic needs of Elijah, God now tries a talking cure. What are you doing here, Elijah? The response is terse, petulant and angry. Elijah uses exactly the same words on two occasions. Firstly, when he arrives, and then after he's experienced storm, earthquake, fire and vision. To the same question, Elijah gives the same answer, seemingly untouched by the momentous experiences he's had. So here's the fifth challenge. Addressing depression, poor mental health, takes time and patience and multiple interventions. Sufferers aren't coming out of it like an onlooker in Men in Black, zapped with a memory-erasing gizmo and right back where they started. They're on a journey, and those around them are too. Our part of this Old Testament story ends with Elijah continuing his journey from the cave and into the world again. 5 challenges, 5 things to look out for. Don't assume that outward success equals inner happiness. Be alert to withdrawal and lack of communication. Notice and question changes in routine or personal care. Don't expect overnight solutions. Don't be angered or guilt-ridden by relapse. Now, I realise that there are lots of pitfalls in seeking to use the story of a friendless, itinerant loner who talks to God as a tool for exploring mental health. But if nothing else, at least it demonstrates that what we often think of as a very 21st century problem is in fact as old as humankind. And it makes me, for one, very grateful that if the journey becomes too much, we have both the stories of the Bible and the skills of modern healthcare services, each placing their cakes of bread and jars of water by our weary and worried heads and saying, "Get up and eat."